My name is Rod Gibson. I'm a former drummer and drum tech now. Well, try to be a drum tech, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about drums and drumming and what I do. And this part is basically a self-introduction bio about me, my life, and what happened to me because I loved music. And you can look at it as what can happen to you, or if you want to work in the music industry, be it as a musician or technician or producer. You don't always get what you want, but if you have a passion and a desire, you can keep going and going as long as you want to, and that's what I've done. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and what happened to me with my career in the last 34 years, and hopefully you can learn something from it. I was born in 1962 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, moved to San Diego in 1964. It was still a sleepy little town, nothing like it is today. It was primarily a Navy and retirement town. There wasn't really any rock and roll, 2 or 3 clubs, that was about it. I started playing when I was 9 years old in military school, and primarily parades, concert bands, jazz bands in high school, that sort of thing. And mostly a lot of rudimentary military drumming, but I also learned every percussion instrument, you know, be it marimba or tambourine, piano, any percussion instrument, which was pretty required and rudimentary for most drummers at that time. This was the early 70s. After military school, I went to public school, kept drumming, and at that point, about 12, 13, I'd had drum lessons for 6 years. My parents had yet to let me get a drum kit, which I wasn't really thrilled about, but it was like the train set for Christmas theory. If you got a train set for Christmas, by February you were done playing with it. So they had a pretty good idea. So after 6 years of lessons and me being so determined, they finally took me to a store, bought me a drum kit, and within 2 or 3 months I was playing professionally. I was 13, 14 years old, playing any gig I could get while going to high school full time. This was 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And I was playing any gig, weddings, parties, concerts in the parks, some clubs, though I was underage, everything. And my parents would help me. They were very supportive, load all my gear in the car, take me to the bar, let me play 3 sets, made sure I had my homework done, get me back, get me to bed. I'd go to school the next day. And after I graduated in 1980, within 2 weeks I started playing, again, every gig that I could, did my first van tour. All 6 guys piled into a van traveling around the Southwest, playing whatever gig we could. Again, same thing, clubs, military clubs, keg parties, the Del Mar Fair, everything, throughout LA, San Diego, Arizona, whatever gig we could scrounge up. We were living the dream. And a couple years later, struggling through 2 or 3 different bands. About 1983, I was with a band here locally, and we had kind of run out of options. We ended up moving to Texas. My parents had kind of broke down with some money, moved us there. There was a really big music scene there. Of course, we got there and within a month imploded, and I decided to stay living in Texas. I worked at a company there in San Antonio called the Bonham Exchange. It's still there today. It's a historic building, quite beautiful. Has a ballroom upstairs, and I ended up being one of the production crew guys there because I had a drum kit and a ton of PA and lighting, and they didn't. So myself and 3 other guys became the production crew. Even though I wasn't playing music, I was still working in music and doing sound and lights for a lot of the early MTV bands that came through, like Joaquin Carrasco, the Ramones, the Bangles, Tina Turner on her comeback tour, Wall of Voodoo, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Adam and the Ants, all those early MTV bands. So I gained a lot of education from that, though again I wasn't being a musician. I learned how to put on concerts, how to promote concerts, what the touring lifestyle was really like, and got thrown into it head first. After about 8 months, I had a job offer to move back to, or to move either back home or to Nashville, Tennessee, and I decided to move there in 1983. I got to Nashville, which was country music mecca at the time. There was really no rock and roll there, and there wasn't a job either, so I became stranded there and homeless. Luckily I had a van, and I lived in my van, and wanted to be in a band and do everything I could, but again I had very little income. My parents were still supportive, but over 2,000 miles away, and basically said, you got yourself there, get yourself home. So again, I did what I knew how to do. I did sound and lighting, played a few gigs, did some work in Nashville while living in my van down by the river, and had a job offer to go out with this band up in Cleveland. And Cleveland, as it still is a big rock and roll town, and was then. So I went on this tour. It was supposed to be 3 weeks up and down the East Coast. Sounded like a good plan. I can't remember what I was going to make. It was nothing, but at the time, maybe $200 sounded like all the money in the world. And I was 20 years old, not quite 21 yet. So I did that. Third show, the band broke up. I was stranded in Cleveland. Again, same thing, homeless, living in my van, no money, nothing to do. I was fortunate enough to find one of the band members' family who let me live in their basement rather than my van. And again, after about a month of doing gigs and selling some power amps and anything else I could do to get money to get back home, I finally accomplished. Went back to Nashville, grabbed all my gear, sold a few more pieces, threw the rest of the stuff in my van in a trailer, drove back to California, and moved back in with my folks. At that time, it was late 1983, and I started to put together a band with a few people here in San Diego, which eventually transpired into a band called Bible Black. And Mark Langford, who runs the school, was also a member of that band. One of the early first members as well. He was my first choice because I'd known him before. And so Mark was doing his thing like he is now with sound and lighting, and that was a big help. He'd been on the scene while I was gone. We had a lot of connections, knew a lot of people, and instantly got thrown into playing some pretty major, serious gigs. And we had a great work ethic. We played, again, every gig we could get, outside of weddings and high school dances. We might have done a high school dance, I don't know. But we played, again, every club. Because back then, that's what you did. You were a working musician and you played 5 nights a week. We didn't have the benefit of the internet or iTunes or things like today. If you wanted people to hear your music, you went out and you did 100 shows a year or more. And that's what we did. And we lasted about 3 years, played a ton of gigs up and down the coast, opened for a bunch of bands, changed some members, and eventually imploded due to various things, drugs being one of them, unfortunately. And after that, I kind of lived in LA and San Diego, back and forth, working with Mark, played tons of sessions, again, virtually every gig I could get. I worked in original bands as well, but primarily made my living as a working drummer, working musician then, doing everything I could live or in the studio, learning how to master both worlds, because they are two different worlds. The years went by, about 1990, 91, I started working with Mark again in a band called Dance Macabre, and back before Soma was next door, when it was downtown, still run by Lynn, we became the house band there, or they were the house band by the time I joined. So, same thing, we did lots of gigs, opened for a lot of bands, worked for about 2 years, till that situation kind of fell apart. And it sort of splintered into different things, and Mark had already left and done his guitar playing thing on his own. So again, I went back to what I knew how to do. I became a drummer for hire. I played on dozens of sessions, everything from little cassette demos to stuff that was pressed into vinyl and CD, though there wasn't much of a session demand or studio demand here in town, as well as playing live. And again, I did every gig I could get, playing in multiple bands at a time, be it in the Bay Area, San Diego, LA, or 3 gigs in all cities over the weekend. I did weddings, casuals, again, anything I could get, just to work, just to make money and get experience and exposure. Though at this time I'd already been a professional musician for about 10 years. Kept working and playing. I did everything, even played for 13 weeks in a country western musical here in San Diego. And this was moving into 1992, 1993. I was kind of getting bored and burned out. I was working on several projects, original projects, and none of them were really panning out. We were playing all up and down the Hollywood Strip and clubs here and opening for major bands, but we just weren't getting any record deals. So after about a year of that with 3 different projects, I'd stopped and decided to move to a different music city. I chose Nashville because I'd been there before. I'd lived in Austin, I'd lived in Hollywood, I'd lived in the Bay Area. All those were good, but they just, I didn't think were going to really hold for me what I wanted. And I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to do something different rather than really play music, which I know is kind of the wrong idea, but I wanted a different life at the time and had a wife and a child and was looking for something different. Did not move there to be a drummer. And within about 12 days, I was in a studio tuning drums for a major country artist because someone knew or heard that I knew how to play drums and tune them, and started making good money at it. So being a professional drummer for years and working in the studio, on the stage, etc., I knew my way around the drum kit, and for the next 15, 16 years, that's what I did. That's what I still do today. I didn't have to kick anybody out of the band. I didn't have to dress up. I didn't have to wear makeup or, you know, show up for band rehearsals or anything like that. I simply just became a drum tech, and I would go in and work on the drums, set them up, make them sound good, clean them, if need be, play them sometimes. And again, that's how I've made my living. I spent 10 years working with Southern rock legends Lynyrd Skynyrd, went all over the world, made numerous albums, CDs, DVDs, music videos, etc. Did 2 tours with ZZ Top, Velvet Revolver, Neil Young, Carrie Underwood, Celtic Woman, David Lee Roth's comeback tour, and on and on and on. Just, again, whatever I could find that would pay the bills and that I could learn something from and work with, as well as making dozens and dozens of records in Nashville, whatever they were, country, rock, rap. If they needed a drum guy to come in, I would do it, or somebody that would play kind of behind the scenes, I would do that as well. And that's where I am now. Still, years later, I'm still making records and touring. Getting ready to go out on a tour next week and do the same thing. I'll be doing keyboards as well. And that's kind of my bio. That's my story of what can happen to you if you choose a life in music. You might not always get what you want, but if you have a passion and a dream and you love music and you want to keep working, you can. You can keep doing it, and you'll pay your bills, you'll make a good living, you'll travel the world, meet a lot of great people, and have fun. That's it.
Very cool.
Good.
All right. Thank you.
Just easy, and or if it's, you'd never know.
You kind of never know. I would say don't ever work for your musical heroes, you know, because you'll see the warts and all, and, you know, you'll stop listening to their records. I worked with Skynyrd for 10 years. They were really great. It was the last band I ever thought I would work for. I didn't like their music. I didn't want to play their music. But I stumbled into the gig. It was the best drum gig in Nashville, and within a year of moving there, I had it. Like I said, did 10 years with them. They were a great kind of family-based organization, which was really important, and I liked that. Most of the artists, that I worked with were really friendly and great. David Lee Roth was incredible, you know, greatest frontman in rock ever. But he was a lot of fun and extremely professional and knew exactly what he wanted, so it made it really easy. You just showed up and you had a game plan and off you went. ZZ Top, another great band, you know, who doesn't love their music? They were all really good guys, a lot of fun to work with, a lot of Mexican food, and the shows were just fun. You know all the hits, you know all the songs, and they're down to earth and real mellow. Everything's on a, you know, good budget, good professional level. So we had a lot of fun out there and did a lot of gigs. Other bands that I've worked for, not so much fun. Most of those issues were either bad management issues, like any business. If it's not run properly, it's going to have problems, and that will trickle all the way down through the band and into the crew. And or drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff, you know, just ruins your working environment, because you've got to be professional. No matter how much you want to party or how hard you do party, come 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever showtime is, you have to put on the best rock show ever. And you have to remember that there's people that traveled hundreds of miles to see that show, and that might be the only show they go to all summer, and they expect to see the best show there is. More than once, I played with these bands. I wasn't the drummer. It was kind of like, hey, the drummer's injured, or the drummer's passed out, or the drummer fell off stage, or the drummer, we don't know where he is. We haven't seen him for 3 days. So I would end up playing, and the only thing that got me through that is I'd been a drummer for 16 years before, and I'd heard the material over and over doing shows, so you just kind of slip into it and, you know, hope you can get through the show. That might sound like a dream to everybody, you know, playing with big bands or your idols, and, you know, I enjoy playing, but all the pressure's on you, because everybody in the band is looking at you. The audience doesn't know half the time. They don't care. They just want to hear a good show. But it adds an extra dimension to your work, and a lot of stress as well. because it's not a situation that you can really relax in. You've got to remember everything, the cues, the songs, and again, you don't get any rehearsal. There's a couple bands I ended up with 5-10 minutes notice. Hey, we've got a 2-hour show, are you ready to go? You know, so it can be a hassle at times. Sometimes it's fun, it just depends. Most of the bands were really great, really professional. A lot of them had been around for years and years. The newer bands are usually pretty polite and eager to learn. Again, I'm older. I'm 48, I'm not farting dust, but I'm not a kid either. So when I work with a lot of young bands, and they see my resume or we have a few chats, they understand, and I try to, you know, push on to them like what I am here, what I can tell you. So I'm going to give a brief description of a drum kit for those of you that don't know it or might know it or want to know a little more. I'll go around, talk about each piece a little bit, give a basic description, and any helpful stuff I can think of along the way. This is just a basic DW kit. I'm not sure of the shell material. I'm going with maple. Looks like just basic regular rock sizes. 22 kick. Looks like a 5x14 snare drum. Zildjian cymbals. This is the way the kit was set up. When I do my job and I come in, that's how I approach it, because I'll come into a show or a session and I can't move anything. The drummer's got it set up the way he wants. It's usually mic'd up, ready to go. It's my job to come in and work with what I'm given and make it beautiful, make it sound great. So we'll start off, the first thing when you sit down is the stool, of course, or your chair. Some people call it the throne. The biggest drum in front of you, the bass drum, or some people call it a kick drum. And all the drums have got lugs. These are tensioners or tuners. Guitar players, you know, have them on the headstock. On the drum, they're all around. And you use that to tension the head or tune the drum, basically. The kick drum has usually a front and a back head or batter head, which is on my side of the kick drum, and spurs, of course, to keep it from scooting around on the floor while you're playing. The next drum, snare drum, and it's called a snare drum, of course, because it's got snares on the bottom, for those of you that don't know. And this is the strainer. It's used to adjust the sound of the snares. And you've got the butt on the other end. And of course, these are the snares. And this is usually strainer cord. I use different things. And again, you can adjust it and tune it this way. This is tuned pretty tight. And with a few turns, it'll loosen up to whatever sound you want or personal taste. And again, the drum has got lugs. Each one of the lugs has a lug rod to tune it. The batter head, which you play on, is usually a little heavier than the bottom head. The bottom head is much thinner, so as to get a brighter response. That's the whole idea of the snare, to kind of be the opposite of the kick drum, which would provide your basic beats. And that's a rundown of the snare. And you play the kick drum with a kick pedal, and I'll show you that in just a sec. This is just your standard, it's a double pedal DW makes, and I'm just using one side of it. Of course, you've got the pedal plate or pedal board, the footboard, heel plate, the hinge, which allows the pedal to move up and down. This is a chain drive pedal. It uses almost a small bicycle chain and a sprocket with some teeth. And there's springs on each side for the pedal tension. And these can be adjusted for what's comfortable for the drummer. And it's got a brim lock on it. This is what attaches it to the bass drum. It'll fit right in there to keep it from scooting around. And like the bass drum, it's got spurs on the bottom which can be adjusted. It's got two-sided beaters. It's got a hard plastic side and or a felt side, depending on which kind of sound you want. The hard plastic gives you a lot more attack. It's brighter, depending on the style of music or the sound you're going for. This one here actually has a rubber side, which is kind of in between the felt side, and the felt side is going to give you a deeper, warmer kick drum sound, or say, a more traditional 60s, 70s kick drum sound. And that's basically it. This is a double pedal, like I said. Usually you can get them single, and this one will have a slave pedal that'll come off, and it just saves you the room and hassle of having 2 bass drums. And around the kit you've got toms. These are called rack toms for the most part. Floor toms, they're closer to the floor. They come in just about any kind of size you can imagine. Depending on what you want to do, you should approach it that way. If you're going to be playing jazz, you probably don't want to have an 18-inch floor tom. Or if you're going to be playing heavy metal, you probably don't want to have a 10-inch floor tom or a 10-inch rack. You want a drum that's kind of fitted to the sound and style that you're going for. And it can have wood shells, it can have metal shells, brass or steel. It can have fiberglass shells, or a combination of both, wood and fiberglass. Just depending on what you're looking for. You should take the time and talk to people in music stores or musicians that work and make a living, and find out what they play and why they play it. And don't play anything because your favorite drummer plays it. There's a good chance that he plays it because somebody gave it to him. If you're going to go get something in a music store and spend your hard-earned money, get something that you really want and is going to work and is going to last. But this kit, again, is just a basic rock setup the way it looks. 15-inch hi-hats. This is the hi-hat stand. It's got a pedal on it as well. Controlled by your foot, right or left, depending on how you're going to set up. And you play most of your patterns on that, or the ride cymbal. Again, the hi-hat's got a pedal, so you can keep it closed, or choke it, or just ride it open, or a combination of any and above. Cymbal stands, again, pretty basic, but you've got the feet, and then adjustments. You've got a clamp here. This is a tom mount clamp that you could mount probably whatever you wanted to in it. Obviously the tom and its mount is here, secured on the tom arm. You'll go up, this is the tilter of the cymbal, and it's so you can adjust the cymbal whichever, angle you want it for ease and comfort or looks. And this is a crash cymbal, another crash cymbal. This would be your ride cymbal the way this kit is set up. And again, you would play a lot of time or ride patterns just like on the hi-hat. And the ride cymbal usually has a bigger or brighter bell than the other cymbals, because you're going to be doing a lot of riding on that and generating rhythms, polyrhythms as you play through, kind of driving your beat or driving your song through it, whatever the notes in each bar or section of music will be. Crash cymbals accent, you've got a China cymbal back here, which is inverted. This is actually a swish, not a China cymbal. A China cymbal is going to have a square bell, where a swish is going to have a rounded bell or curved bell like these do. This is the edge of the cymbal, each of these, and the shoulder for the ride. This is mainly the playing area. The crash, you're going to hit it on the edge, and you don't want to hit it straight on. You want to hit a crash cymbal moving across it. This will save the edge, you won't beat it up, and you probably won't break it. And you can play the bells of any, get different sounds. And the same thing with a swish or a china. The edge, the bevel and shoulder, and the body on this one, because it's upside down, and then into the bell. That's the basics of the kit. On each of the kit, or each of the drums, you've got drum heads, all tuned to a different pitch. And the drum heads on this kit are made by Remo. Pretty much every manufacturer out there uses Mylar, which is a plastic. It's pretty durable, fairly weather resistant, easy to tune, clean, maintain, deal with, and fairly inexpensive. And I don't have a drum head to show you, but on the inside of the head where it will fit inside the rim, this is the rim, each drum has a rim. They're metal on the toms on this kit, wood on the kick drum, There are some manufacturers that make wooden rims. But on the inside of the drum head, you've got a metal ring, usually aluminum. Inside that is a ring of epoxy. And the head fits down in there. They're machine mounted. The epoxy's dried so that as you tune the head and put pressure on it and a lot of strain and play the drum, it doesn't separate or come unseated. And they can take a lot of abuse and a lot of pressure. Cymbals, they're made out of bronze for the most part. Rarely do you find a brass cymbal anymore. Bronze is a soft, brittle metal, so you want to not take a torch to it or get it really cold. You can play cymbals clean or dirty. Some people have their preferences. It's really a cosmetic thing for me. A lot of drummers think it affects the sound, and in some ways it does. It just depends on the grime and what you've got on there and the age of the cymbal. And again, it's bronze, so it's a combination of metals, and every manufacturer has their own formula. Different ways of making them. They come in all different sizes. Some of them come in different shapes besides circular. They're usually stamped out of a sheet of metal and then tuned. They're hammered as well. You can see here some of the hammering, and they're lathed also. If you were looking at the cymbal up close, you'd see a lot of circles around it where the machinist has put it on a lathe while it's turning and shaved or cut some of the bronze away from it to give the cymbal its tonal characteristics. And that's really it. That's the basics for the kit. And I'll go through and tune some stuff, get it up to speed. It's pretty close, and show you how to make it work. As far as keeping the cymbals clean, I always recommend anytime you're moving gear, whether you're a guitar player, keyboard player, drummer, go to Home Depot or a hardware store, get yourself a $10 set of gloves and use it. You'll keep your hands from getting scarred and beat up at the show, because it's pretty hard to play a show if you cut your hand on something or smash your knuckles or banging on something while you're trying to set up. And when you pull your cymbals out of a case, that way you're not getting fingerprints on them, and the oils and the acids, depending on, let's say you had a lot of orange juice that day or something, will eventually etch the metal, because again, it's a bronze, it's a really soft metal, and there's some people who have a really acidic system and they'll stain the cymbals, and then you've got to clean them more and more if that's what you want to do, keep them clean. As far as cleaning the cymbals, my best suggestion is WD-40. When you get a brand new cymbal, unless you do a lot of cymbal choking, a lot of grabbing, like a lot of Tommy Lee tricks, if you don't touch the cymbals a lot, when you get a new cymbal, it comes with it's not necessarily a wax, but it comes with like a protectant already on it, and which will come off or wear off over time. Every time you play, take your towel, spray some WD-40 on the towel, or you can spray it directly on the cymbal. You don't want to get it all over the drums, of course, and just wipe the cymbal down. This will keep a film coating on the cymbal, and WD-40 is great for taking off all kinds of blemishes and varnish, dirt, dust, tar, anything like that. It's a great cleaner. And then that way, every 6 months, every 3 months, maybe once a year, you'll actually have to use a manufacturer's polish or a polish to clean your cymbal. And I always recommend a wet polish. If you use a manufacturer's polish, follow the directions. They've spent a lot of time and testing going through all that, making sure that it's the right thing and works. Or the trick I use as a drum tech is Windex and Neverdull. You can get Neverdull in almost any hardware store. You can order it online. It's a cotton wadding. It's pretty non-abrasive. It's soft, it's wet, though it does have a pretty strong petroleum chemical in it, and this will clean your cymbals. After a few cleanings, it'll take, if you have any logos or any stamping or anything on the cymbals, it'll take that off. But you'll have bright cymbals, and just again follow the basic directions. Don't use a buffer on your cymbals. Don't use a lot of pressure on your cymbals. Any friction will generate heat, and that can change the molecular structure of the metal or crack your cymbal. And when you're done, spray it down with Windex and use a very clean towel, and it'll lift all the oxidation out. And you'd be surprised how much will come off on your towel. If you have a white towel, it'll be black in no time, and your cymbals will be blindingly bright. But again, this is only going to hold up for so long. If you're out doing a lot of shows and they're getting fingerprints on them, or let's say you're in a club that has a chemical fogger, you'll get dirty cymbals really quick.
What about the wood now? How do you clean the wood?
Again, being a tech, I use Windex because it's simple. You can get it in just about any store. It's economical, and it's easy to deal with, and it'll take the fingerprints right off. My only complaint with Windex is it will streak at times, so use a towel to clean with, go back over the surface again with a clean dry towel, and that'll take off any streaks. And the thing about Windex is you can use it to clean the heads, you can use it to clean the wood or the finish, no matter what kind of finish it is, be it plastic or a matte finish or like this that has a urethane or varnish on it. It'll clean the metal like there's no tomorrow. It'll look nice and shiny if that's what you want. It'll take the fingerprints and everything off. And again, just use 2 towels, one for cleaning and one for wiping all the streaks off, and it'll look brilliant. And if you clean it before you set up, then you don't have to go, or as you're setting up. If you put each piece on, say one at a time, and just make it a quick 1 minute with each drum cleaning process, by the time you're set up, it'll take you about 5 to 10 minutes extra. Everything will be clean and done. You won't have to worry about it. There's some other cleaning products out there. You can get in music stores and that sort of thing. If you want to spend the money and do that, cool. For me, again, Windex works great, and it's cheap. You can get it everywhere. As I was saying earlier, there's a pedal on this. It's set up primarily the same way: heel plate, hinge, footboard, chain, a little bit heavier chain. Technique is preferential to what works for you. I'm not going to tell you how to play a drum or a pedal, though you should talk to your teacher and get some instructions. My main reason for telling people to have good technique is so they don't injure themselves or break equipment, because you can't do your gig if you have tendinitis or a sprain or something like that, and a lot of drummers have those problems. They have a lot of back problems as well because they don't sit correctly. Anyway, with the hi-hat, again, you've got the pedal, and it's going to control the hi-hat rod, which runs up and down through this tube, and there's a spring in there, and again, as you play it, it's going to move it up and down. There should be a tension adjuster under here, which you can't really see, but it will either, or up inside, down here they usually are, and it'll either adjust the tension of the spring, if you like it, harder to play or softer, whatever, works for you and your physicality of it. On the hi-hat rod is what's called the hi-hat clutch, and it's basically that. It clutches or grabs the hi-hat rod, and on the bottom it's got just like a wing nut you would have on a regular cymbal. This one has a lug rod style lock, which isn't locked, but that's probably because we set it up real quick. And this is to keep it from coming undone while you're playing, because that's kind of embarrassing and people might stop dancing. It's got a felt on each side, just like on a cymbal stand. The felt is to keep it positioned and from damaging itself. And the cymbal will set in between there, and then there's 2 adjustment washers on the top. And again, you can see I can get this to move around, so as much flexibility or movement as you want in the cymbal. You can either clamp it down so it's very tight, which affects the sound and the playing, or you can open it up all the way so it's really wet and liquidy and sloppy, depending on what you're going to do and what you're playing, what style of music, etc. And again, you can adjust this to where you've got a real, almost too tight, clamp down or bite to it, or you can, have it opened up for, again, a lot more movement. That'll get you a lot more volume, depending again on the style and what you're trying to play. And I'll just sort of set it medium for what we're going to get into in a minute. The smaller the cymbal, it's going to be faster, brighter. Not always brighter, because they make a great, variation in tones with them, but it'll be faster, brighter, quicker with response. It'll die out quicker. And gong is a perfect example. If you have a 20, let's say 20 or 24 inch China, or even like a Wuhan 28 or 30, that's going to last a long time because you've got a big mass of metal that's going to be vibrating. And let's say, like if you had a 15, you've only got 15 inches for that sound or frequency to travel through, so it's a short distance. Just like a wave, it's a shorter, quicker wave. Where if you have a 24-inch cymbal or a 20-inch cymbal, then you've got more mass that's got to get rid of and expel that energy. So you're going to get more sustain out of it. You'll get more tone, or maybe less tone, but usually more tone, more harmonics, different frequencies, that sort of thing. So again, that's a good question, and you want to think beforehand, what sound is it that you're really going for? What style or what kind of application is it going to fit? And again, if you're playing with a lot of electric instruments, what's going to be your competition with a cymbal? Because, you know, the human hearing frequency range, and if you teach audio classes here, everyone will learn this, goes from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Most people don't hear that. And I'm a freak of nature, I do. I hear from 18 hertz to about 23 kilohertz. I lucked out, I guess. And that ruined my career as a record producer, because I want to hear great lows and extreme highs where most people listen to my mixes and go, where I thought they sounded great, because again, I could hear above that. So, and I thought, you know, kick drum with a ribbon mic, man, that's beautiful, it sounds amazing. Doesn't always work, so there went my career as that. But if you're going to play with electric instruments, you want bigger cymbals, because again, being a drummer, you can't turn up. You're going to play harder, you're going to hurt your hands, you're going to damage your gear, where your bass player is just going to walk over and go,
Right.
you know, or your guitar player. So, and that's my advice with drummers. Learn what your gear needs are, what your style of music or the applications, you know, the gigs and stuff you're going to do, what it really requires, and go for that. Buy something once, don't buy it twice. Save your money, buy the right thing. Most important thing for cymbals, a lot of drummers, young drummers especially, they will save up a lot of money to get a really nice 22-inch ride, and they don't have a case to put it in. They wrap it in a blanket. Save up the money you'd get for the ride and go buy a real cymbal case. Don't buy a cymbal bag. I know there's got to be at least one, if not 2 or 3 case companies in town, big city, and have yourself made a proper flight case for your cymbals. Sure, it'll cost you $300, but if you drop it, or it falls out of the truck, or your girlfriend throws it, you don't have to worry about it. You know, it's made to take it. Where a cymbal bag, it's like dropping a bag of groceries. And you got to figure, you know, this is just a basic setup. So this is going to be $200. These are going to be 120 each. This is going to be 80 to 150. Set of hi-hats, $300. So right there, that's going to add up really quick. You know, if you were, let's say you used a rider truck for your gig, and you drop cymbals in a bag 4 feet off the back of that truck, they're all going to get damaged, if not cracked, and that's the end of your cymbal. There's nothing you can do to fix a cracked cymbal. You can drill some holes in it, you can shave it off, but once that cymbal's damaged, it's going to continue to break and crack because you've damaged it. And you'll change the entire tonal characteristics, which is defeating its purpose. Unless, like Bill Bruford, that's what you're going for. But that's my best advice. My other best advice is if you're going to go and be any kind of working drummer or musician, no matter what you're playing, have a spare. You should have at least a spare or second snare drum. If you have a wooden snare drum, get a metal one. Doesn't matter if it's brass or steel. Get you a metal one and a wooden one. That way you've got 2 variations. Let's say your band goes in to do a demo, and you know this is a great wooden Slingerland snare. I have one of these at home, as a matter of fact, and it makes gold records. It's beautiful. But no matter what I do with it, it's not going to sound like a Black Beauty. So get you a metal snare for that certain tone, be it brass, steel, you know, whatever you want. Or if you have a metal snare drum, get you a wooden one. It's going to sound different because the shell produces different frequencies, different tonal characteristics that might or might not work with your music. If you're going to play reggae music or ska or a lot of punk music, obviously you want a metal snare drum. If you're going to play country or blues or something like that, where you need a little more tone out of the drum, get you a wood snare drum. And again, they come in all different sizes and shapes and that sort of thing. Not necessarily shapes, they're all round, but again, learn what your style or your playing needs and get yourself one. And the other spares, have a spare kick pedal. For what you do, you know, let's say you get a box full of parts, you could buy you another pedal. You can get pedals on eBay or pawn shops for, you know, 30 to 100 bucks. There you go. And all you needed to do is get you through 20, 30 minutes. If you break a pedal, get to the end of the set or show, you can fix it, bada bing, you're done. Where if you don't have a spare, guitar solo. So, again, if you're going to go out and work and you're going to try and be professional, act like a professional musician. And if you go to any professional musician, of course, again, a lot of them are endorsed, they've all got backups and spares, you know. And that's because the idea is to keep working. If you don't keep working, you can't put food on the table, and or you know, you can't afford sticks or whatever. So.
Are hi-hat cymbals always the same size? Do people ever use combinations of two different size cymbals or things like that? Do you ever use big cymbals on a hi-hat? They always seem to be about the same.
Your standard, give me just a sec.
I got a 15-inch myself.
Yeah?
A bit larger.
15 is good. Hi-hat cymbals will come in multiple sizes. 15s like these are more for rock. Some of the older like big band jazz guys would use them too, because again it's got a much more complex tone. Though you had rock drummers like Carl Palmer and Neil Peart who play 13-inch hi-hats. I think at home I've got a set of 8s, 10s, 12s, 13s, 14s, and 15s. But you know, they're all for different things. Different manufacturers, different sizes, different weights as well. Again, if you're a hard player, you want a heavier cymbal. A thinner one sounds really great and shimmery and shiny, but you're going to break it. And then you're going to go spend more money. But they come in different sizes and weights, and there are a lot of drummers that mix and match. I do sometimes, depending on what I'm going for. The sound. J-Mo, drummer with the Allman Brothers, if you can find a picture at the right angle or you go see him live, he's got 3 hi-hat cymbals, not just the 2. He's got one that usually will sit upside down here as well. And he'll do some sticking patterns between sometimes, but it also adds an extra tonal characteristic. Because what he does is he puts both the bells, you know, together. So rather than being like this where the bells are apart, the bells are on top of each other. So even though he's playing these 2 cymbals, the one on the bottom is resonating and creating this extra tone. And it does this whole different thing. And again, there's drummers who will do things like I've seen him, you know, put rivets in, like I talked about with the China, put BBs in there. You know, Bunny Carlos, from day one, I think has had rivets in the bottom of his cymbal, you know, on the bottom hat, so your stick doesn't get caught. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. ProMark makes a great product. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically like a chain, and you can cut it to adjust it, and it just slips over your cymbal felt or slips like over your hi-hat, and you just cut it to fit, you know, just about a ½ inch or so from the edge, or maybe you just want a little. And they're fairly inexpensive, and it adds a lot of great, interesting sounds and stuff. You just want to make sure you don't get it caught up in your stick. So, those records, and you can tell right away, you know, what, you might not see the color, but you can understand, you know, that guitar's got a certain sound and a certain tone. So when you're approaching the drum kit, depending, people will say warmth, and I think what they mean is instead of, you know, for example, like this drum. Let's pull the drum key off. Now, of course, it's different size, but you know, this one's pitched up a little bit. It's smaller, so it's going to be brighter, and this one, it's a little warmer. It's got a lot more depth and tone. So people will use all kinds of terms to describe it. I did a session once, and the producer told me, I want the drums to sound red, and it was a blue kit. We eventually found red, but you know, people will use all kinds of words, you know, and I won't name any movies, but you've probably seen a lot of comedies where they do the same thing with certain things, and it just depends. But you know, bright, airy, open, dark, you know, depth. A lot of people will say, I want a real woody snare, you know. And working, you will learn through situations and stuff, you know, what a lot of those tones mean. And again, my best example, again, pointing to guitar players, if you have a Les Paul, it's never ever going to sound like a Strat, and vice versa. And a Tele will always sound like a Tele. Now you can do certain things, change cabinets, change pickups, change pedals, but that guitar was made to have certain characteristics. Just like a cymbal, it's going to do a certain thing, you know. And again, like I was speaking of a wooden snare, or let's say if you're playing like a jazz type of music, you might want a 20 or an 18-inch kick. It's real bright, though you can get a lot of low end out of it, and it's real fat. Well, if you're a big rock drummer and you want that big kind of rock sound, then you're going to want a 24, or like a John Bonham who eventually moved up to 26. You know, and in between, you're never going to make an 18-inch kick drum really sound like a 26. You can fool with the miking, you can fool with the frequencies, you can fool with the outboard gear and put effects or whatever on it, especially with today's digital technology, but the drum is going to do what it does. And there's limitations with that. With each instrument, there's going to be limitations. And again, learn what those are, and learn what the characteristics that the manufacturer put into each instrument is going to be, rather than go in and say, you know, I want this amp or this cymbal or this guitar because this guy plays it. You know, that guy is who he is. And my best example of that is, I'll give you two guitar stories. And I'll refer to guitar stories because they're, to me, kind of easier for everybody to understand rather than me talking about a drummer. Two guitar players, everybody knows pretty much, Billy Gibbons and Jeff Beck. They're both known for their incredible playing, but mostly for their tone. Everybody hears their records and goes, man, what tone, even if you're not a guitar player. And I've seen this in person with both these players. These guitar players can go in and they will pick up any instrument, and they will pick it up and it will immediately, without adjusting anything on the amp or the guitar, sound like them. I saw Billy Gibbons do this at a store in Canada. We went in, we were looking at amps, this was on a tour some years back, and this store happened to have some vintage Vox amp. I couldn't tell you what the model was, but it was like a late 60s, early 70s model, and the amp and the head kind of fit in this metal TV tray roll-around rack. It was beautiful, great condition, sounded great, worked great, and he was interested in getting it. And all the guys in the store were like, oh my God, you know, here's Billy Gibbons in our store. And then he wanted a guitar. So they're all kind of running around, wondering, worrying what, you know, let's get the best Les Paul, or, you know, whatever. Billy reached around, pulled a brown BC Rich off the rack, plugged it in, started playing, just like that. It was Billy Gibbons. It sounded just like every ZZ Top record there was. He might have touched the knobs a minute or two later for all of 3 to 5 seconds. That was it. It's all in the player's hands. If you take a drummer like Neil Peart and set him down at this kit or any other kit, it's going to sound like Neil Peart. If you take John Bonham, rest his soul, the same thing. You know, a drummer has a certain style, certain playing characteristics, and only so much of that will come out of the instrument. It comes out of the person's head, out of their personality, their soul, and it comes out of their hands as well. And all you're doing is you're taking what is in your head and you're transferring it to your fingertips. And being a drummer, we have an issue because a guitar player or a vocalist has it right there. You know, you're having direct contact with the instrument. You can move, you can change things, you can play with a different part of your finger. It'll all make a difference. Same with keyboards. There's a lot of different technique there, and the way it, you know, you're hammering on it, the way the tension and the spring action is. Or with a drummer, we have to take that signal and push it all the way down the stick to the tip. And these are a short stick, but if you play a regular stick, there were some here earlier, they're usually about 1 inch to 2 inches longer. So then you're adding to it. So our slight disadvantage is that you've got to get that signal, that sound, all the way from your head, well, it's only about 3 or 4 feet, to the tip of that stick. And then you've got to get it through plastic, and it's got to resonate through wood. And no matter what you do, you're hampered by that as well, because a drum is never going to be anything but wood, plastic, and metal, unless it's made out of something else. But still, it's just like basic cake batter. It might be different material, but it's always going to be wood, plastic, and metal, or fiberglass, plastic, and metal. And that's just what it is. So you've got to make the best with it, know how to tune it, know how to make it work with the weather, which all this will only come with time. So you'll get that sound to the tip of that stick. And again, you have to practice and work at it and learn how it works. You can't just sit down and, you know, kind of play at something. Sure, if you've played long enough, you've learned there's a sweet spot on the snare. And if you play the snare directly in the middle, you know, you're kind of, it's kind of damp, even though I'm barely rim shotting. And if you play it off to the side, say halfway, you're getting a little bit more tone or a different, you know, acoustic characteristic out of it. And depending on, you know, the pattern you're going to play or whatever, get out of it. So that's what I can tell you about that. As I think, how can you tell what the drum kit sounds like from where I'm sitting, from where the audience is, or from where your band members are in proximity? And my best example, again, when I'm working with the drummer and I'm listening to the drummer play, being a technician, or when I'm a drummer as well, you listen to the kit back here. And the disadvantage you have is, if you look at the way the kit's set up, everything is pointing away from me, from what I'm hearing. And the way the drum and all the cymbals and just like speaker cabinets are designed, they're designed to throw sound away. And it's usually not coming this way. You're going to hear some, and you'll hear ambience, you know, from around the room. So you'll be sitting here sometimes and tuning and going, oh man, that is just, you know, that's fat, or, you know, whatever description you're going to use. That's the sound. And you'll look out and somebody will be going, you know, oh, is that what you're really going for? So what I would do is I would walk around the kit in the room and I would listen to what the drummer's playing and the way things sound. And depending on the situation, you can go out to front of house and listen to it through the PA. You can listen to it through the monitors, or you can go in the control room, listen to it through the speakers, through the headphones, and kind of get an idea that way. And you can also, again being the tech, or if you've got someone in the band that can keep a beat, just ask them to just play a beat and do a basic, you know, eighth note roll around the drums or whatever. They don't need to play a bunch of stuff and noise it up. Go out and listen to the way your drum kit sounds. And is that the way you want it to sound? And again, you have to take into account, what kind of PA am I playing through? What kind of mics is it? And again, a school like this is perfect. It'll teach you a lot of that stuff, you know, which you'll learn. And take the time to learn about acoustics. You know, we're in a room here that's got carpet on the floor. It's got a curtain behind us. It's got acoustic tiles. Some, you know, acoustic panels on the wall, and it looks like just, you know, finished drywall, and then there's some glass in the back. So you're talking about plus there's air conditioning and recessed lighting. So you're talking about a multitude of acoustics in here. And there's only so much you can do with those. But tune the kit the way you like it. Go out, have somebody play it and listen to it, and do the same thing. Just have the guy and stand 4 feet from the kit. Because whatever's going to go, you know, sound only travels so far and so fast. So 100 feet away or 50 feet away, it's not going to sound like it here. And the microphone is going to be, you know, within proximity of a few inches of the drum. So you want to stand within about 4 feet of the drum. And you can get a good idea of what it sounds like on that side. And, you know, the other thing I've done as well, especially in the studio, is you can just walk around, and again, you're going to get, you know, 3-4 feet with the reach of the stick. And it sounds completely different over here, because you can hear that harmonic wobble on this one. And you don't really hear that in the back. Now I can hear it off the snare, but, you know, that's what I would do. And when I'm working, I'll pull the drum off sometimes, listen to both sides of the head, and I'll walk around the room with it a little bit. Get a few feet away from the drum kit so it's not producing a harmonic or a sympathetic tone, and just listen to that drum by itself, and then bring it back and find out, because especially in the studio there's times, man, you'll spend an hour. Somebody will hear a buzz or a noise and you'll just kill yourself trying to find it. And you work on, you know, the first rack tom, and it's coming off the front kick head, or, you know, whatever like that. That's my advice for, you know, seeing what your kit sounds like. Again, it's not going to be you playing it. And working with drummers, like when I do a tour, really quickly I have to learn how to emulate that drummer as much as I can. I'm only going to do a poor imitation, but I'll try and do the best that I can. That way the drummer can go out and listen to it, or if I have to sit in with the band, let's say he wants to go hear the whole band play. Because again, when you're listening to a drum kit by itself, it sounds a certain way. As soon as that bass guitar comes in and guitar comes in, you know, or whatever, or if there's keyboards and you got monitors washing across the stage, man, that changes everything, you know. So, but basically, if you start off with a good drum, you're going to have a good sound. And I don't mean a brand new drum or a named drum. You want to make sure it's a good working condition drum, it's maintained properly, and the shell's consistent, not damaged, no cracks. Doesn't have to be new heads, just tuned right, and that the heads still have some tone and flexibility left in them, and that's really it, man. It's how it sounds. It's not the label or the color or the maker. It's how it sounds. You know, because I mean, I've pulled kits out of pawn shops and just went, oh my God, you know. Or you'd find one Ludwig red kick drum from '65 that was the kick drum, and then the first rack tom is a new DW, and the second rack tom or the first floor tom is an old Gretsch, you know. And it looks, you look at it and you just go, ah, you know, it's a nightmare. But you listen to it in the studio and go, oh my God, you know. So you have to hunt around and find out. And again, when you buy a drum kit from a manufacturer, especially a company like DW, now just about everything's matched, you know, and they put a lot of work and effort into it before they ship it out the door. But not everybody does that. And even with, no matter who it is, the finest kits out there, we know who they are. Every once in a while you'll find something that's got an issue, and it's not just a cosmetic blemish in the finish. You know, again, it's wood, metal, and plastic. It's going to be subjective to weather, everything. And let's say we're in this room, or you're at a club and you're doing a show, especially in the summer. If you get 100 people in it, when you're doing sound check and there's 3 people standing in the club, everything sounds a certain way. If you get 100 people in that room standing there going, you're filling up the room with humidity. Everything changes. Guitars, everything, you know. Your singer's vocal cords will change as well. You know, everything's going to change. Just how it is, there's nothing you can do. When you crank on the AC, it'll send everything the other way. So you just have to learn to work with it.
Pretty interesting. I never heard that about like toms, or I mean, you know, I've never considered that in the sense that, you know, the drum set could be kind of slightly off, even though it's like a matching set or something. But I've definitely heard with sticks, you know, like just because it's a Vic Firth and it's like a perfect pair and it comes together, you know, take the other ones and you know, feel them and actually like play them on the pad and you know, make sure your technique is, you know, at least as similar as possible, and then like listen to the sticks, because so many of them, you know, kind of maybe like a little bit less dense, even though they're slightly the same weight or something.
Right, depending on.
And it'll give it totally different.
Depending on where that wood was grown, or what year, how much it got watered, how much rain it had or didn't have, sure. Just same thing, like some guitars are made in 2 pieces, you know, and sure, for the most part it's matched, and it's not going to matter that much with a guitar. But I mean, I've seen some issues and problems. And with drum shells, especially because you're talking about multiple plies of wood if you're using a wooden kit, and then you're involving the resins and the glues, the finish. There's a lot of questions to it. And it's really easy to crack a drum shell. I know, I broke a lot of them just tuning a kit. And if they get dropped, you know, drums are pretty sturdy. Musical instruments are made to go all around the world. But again, you know, a manufacturer, like you're saying with sticks, they've got a certain amount of time for turnaround. You know, they've got to knock out X amount of sticks or cymbals or drums or guitars or strings or whatever per day. And if they can't meet that, then they're not going to meet all their sales. Or sometimes stuff will sit on the shelf for 6 months. You know, it just depends. And some drummers are really finicky about that, like you brought up the stick thing. That's perfect. I've worked with guys who will spend an hour before the show weighing the sticks with a postal scale. I'm not kidding. Rolling the sticks, you know, doing like 10 different things, and they'll match up like 5 pairs of sticks for the show. And when you're out there playing 100 miles an hour and you're sweating, you know, and there's 20,000 people and flash pots and lasers and all this cat going on, does that really matter? Is it up here? I mean, it depends on the person. You have to find what works for you. And if that ritual works for you, because for a lot of people that's what it is, go for it, man, if that's what helps you. But to me, when I was playing, once you learn to disassociate yourself from all of that, you will get to a place where, you know, people call it different things, zen or whatever. You will get to a place where you're relaxed and you're confident and you're comfortable and you'll go out and play. You know, and you won't worry about, is there fingerprints on the drums? You know, this head is new and this head I've done 2 gigs with. You know, sticks matching, you know, whatever. You know, because all that stuff, man, is just going to impede your mind, because I'm sure you've done a gig and you might be sitting there thinking, I should have had a better burrito. or my girlfriend's on my back, or I only got a quarter tank of gas, or I got a math test on Monday. Whatever your situation is, and the whole point about doing that gig is not just the money or the women or whatever you're getting it out of. It's about expressing yourself, playing music, and getting it out there, you know. And the whole, to me, the idea is to transcend all of this, even this, and put it into your instrument. You can call it art or whatever you want to call it, and get it out there, whether anyone enjoys it or not, because most musicians are playing for themselves. It's not nice to get feedback and everything, but at the end of the night, no matter what people say, and again, they're on the other side, so they're going to see the show differently. It's all about getting it all out and feeling good about it and producing a show or an experience that you're happy with. Because you're the first person to know at the end of the night if you're happy with it or not. Doesn't matter if there's 10,000 people going, dude, that was the best show I ever saw, because you got to sleep with yourself, you know. So that's just my feeling of it. You know, everybody's got their different take. But for me, you know, that's really it. And that's the whole idea, is to get to that point on stage where you're thoroughly comfortable, thoroughly relaxed, you're not worrying about anything else, nothing's bugging you, you just sit down or stand up and just get it out and get down to it, and that's it. So you got to find your zen or find your place where you're just going to get through all that and let it all go, you know, get it all out and, you know, let it go. So.
Good advice.
Take a break for yourself.
Rock drummers that you know, if you ever get like an isolated track or you watch, you can locate some of that old 70s footage and you see all the like ghosting and stuff that he's really doing. You know, you listen to Live at Budokan and you got to really strain to hear some of it. But some of the tracks you can really hear there's so much going on, you know, and when you get to see him do it, you know, he's really overplaying, man, and driving it like a big band. But the way that band plays, man, it's just this chugging rock band. So I think, you know, he's the king of that, like you were saying, doing all these beats and stuff. And when you're listening to it, you know, it's just like a, you know, a basic, like the Surrender beat, or, you know, half their songs, it's just like a 4/4 driving rock beat. But you look at it, man, and the kick is simple, but there's so much more going on, you know. And you listen to that band, and it's like, man, you know, Robin's playing a 12-string, you know, Tom's playing a 12-string bass, Rick's slightly out of tune and doing, you know, everything that he shouldn't be doing, and then you got Bunny back there, you know, doing this swinging rock thing, and it all just kind of, they're all super energized, you know, almost amphetamine. You know, punk rock without crossing that line.
Yeah, I like their punkiness.
Yeah, and it's just, and that's what sold them in the beginning, was their energy, their look and their energy. You know, people just, you either got it or you didn't. And man, they just do this chug-along thing where they just go, you know. I don't know what it is or how it is, but a lot of it is Bunny's playing, you know, because, I mean, I don't know a Cheap Trick song off the top of my head, or I could... You know, and then there's more in it as well. But when everybody's playing over it, again, you've got 4 rhythms, you know, moving in one direction. Because if
a lot of times you could attribute a guitar to the beat, too, and it's adding more of the syncopation.
Yeah, because you've got at least 2, if not 4, of those guys in the band kind of playing along the same thing, you know. And again, Rick will play little pieces over it, you know. And he drops kind of in and out. But you've still got the 3 guys, and especially Robin. I mean, to me, Robin's as good or better than Rick. You know, he's so underrated as a guitar player. But you listen to his tone and the stuff he does, and whenever he does do little leads and stuff, or pieces here and there, it's just like, wow, man. And you've got, you know, you listen to 70s music, rock music, and people, except for AC/DC, weren't playing along together. And then that's something that Cheap Trick did. Because, I mean, I love Kiss. I think they were brilliant. But, you know, there's a guy over here, and there's a guy over there, and there's this guitar in the middle, and then the drums. And it's all kind of moving and working together. But it's not that kind of, not necessarily a wall of sound, but, you know, it's not that thing that Cheap Trick did. And again, you listen to Live at Budokan, and not that it's produced horribly. I mean, it's sonically great, but I mean, you know, the sounds are what they are, and they're going for that dirty, garagey punk kind of thing. And every one of those songs, man, just moves in a certain way. And what's the one tune on there that isn't on a record?
Look Out?
Yeah, Look Out. You know, there's another perfect example as well, with Robin's super melody over it, you know, moving in and out of it, man, and it's just like, it's amazing to me. And I'm a same thing, huge Cheap Trick fan because of that. You know, and there's 1,000 bands out there, but there's nobody that does it that way. And I think that's their little thing is, you know, they just do that thing together. So.